What's going on, guys? Uh, we're talking about Thor, and not Thor Ragnarok. Thor 4. This movie was it was something different. It was fun, kind of like the one before, but it definitely had some flaws, as the reason why you guys probably clicked on this video. So, Thor 4 was for most people to be expected better than Multiverse of Madness, to have a higher Rotten Tomato meter. Uh, no, it was not even close to fresh. Thor 4 was a little too short, and that's what people also complained. Not enough screen time, not enough time for characters to develop that were just so quickly introduced and then just thrown away. Like, for example, my personal opinion, Lady Thor, the Mighty Thor, Jane, she was a cool character. She died, but she needed more screen time because that's a big character that anyone would want to keep in the MCU for a long time. And then they killed her off within one movie. So you need to give someone who's going to die a lot of screen time, or else what is the point? So I think that is definitely a huge factor why people were a little disappointed, but maybe not for you. Uh, a big reason that I definitely know is for a lot of people is Gorr. Gorr was a great villain in the movie for sure. Christian Bale did a great job, but they didn't give him enough screen time. Not even close to enough. I mean, yes, he killed one god. I mean, literally one god. And the rest were off screen and literally basically could have been killed by anybody. There's no even evidence it was Gorr. So they needed to show him killing people. Like, even though it wasn't supposed to be a dark film, it was supposed to be like the most lighthearted film in Marvel to date. Still, you gotta have some diversity. If you don't have diversity in your film, then everything is just kind of like bland. That's kind of what happens. So, many examples of that. When you're just trying so hard to keep it to one theme, the story just falls apart. Thor 4 for me was, like I said earlier, short but reasonable timing. I think they definitely did a great job in the final act. They definitely showed a lot of emotion, but they did not give enough fight between Gorr and Thor. Thor fought Gorr, blah blah blah, but it wasn't really a struggle. Sure, at that one scene at the tiny moon, he was having a struggle, but it was literally just like slimy tentacles that were holding him back, not Gorr's physical power. I mean, I want sword to sword, or in this case, sword to axe fighting, and actual struggle and injuries. I don't think there's even one cut on Thor. Like, Thor got minimal injuries, meanwhile, Gorr was getting slapped around like a baby. So, what is the struggle here? Why is this villain so difficult when you don't show him killing things, when you don't show him being powerful, when you don't show him doing anything positive? And that was my complaint for the movie. Gorr needed to be better. He needed to be a bigger bad, more of Avengers, because that's what they were saying it for. They were saying Gorr was such a bad villain in this movie, in a good way, that he could have been in an Avengers movie. That's what I was hearing. But then I show up and he's like, hi, bye. And I'm like, good, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, so it just wasn't enough. Next was the relationship between Thor and Jane. Now, I think they did a great job on reintroducing each other and even giving some backstory on why they broke up. That was definitely nice to see. And they gave a good enough romance between them, and they finally got to kiss, and they finally just, got to be it together again for a moment. And it was enough time, for sure, for the movie. But I just feel like they needed more. I just feel like it was a little empty. It was just a little empty. But I think they did a really good job when it comes to Thor and Jane and their relationship. Next is their comedy in the movie. Yes, kind of the biggest topic of this movie. The comedy was 100% overkill. While yes, the jokes were cool and all, but they're made for younger people. Still, the movie can be made for anybody. But the real thing is the jokes just weren't funny, and that is the problem. You need to do a lot more test screenings if you're gonna have funny jokes. I feel like if they really want funny jokes, they should have like pumped that movie out to many people as possible without leaking it, and made sure those jokes are funny to the audience in general without them being super fans of Thor. Because if they're super fans of Thor, then they'll just laugh no matter what. So you need something funny that's funny. And I'm not trying to put hate on Taika Waititi or anybody who did this movie. They did a great job, way better than I probably could do on Thor. But they just needed to figure out the diversity of Marvel fans in general and the audience who watches it. Yes, they're kids, but the kids are not looking for that right now. They're in a new era. That would have been a great Phase 1 movie. Thor 4 Phase 1 movie would have got way better critic. But now, especially going into darker tones and multiversal like fights and just crazy stuff, and then you just drop something that is so useless to this big development and that doesn't make sense. It should have been at the beginning of this whole story of the MCU. It shouldn't have been like in Phase 4. So they definitely didn't time Thor 4 great. Yes, good summer movie, but I feel like right after a dark movie, it needed to be like happen. You need a light movie after a dark movie, 100%. I agree with all those statements, but it just didn't feel right. It just felt like too diverse, like bland movie, but too diverse to the whole MCU in general, and wrong timing. They need to match things up a little better, and that's my critic, and I 100% agree with Kevin Feige that we'll figure out where this is going, and we're gonna start getting hyped for maybe a Avengers film or some great like clash up, and maybe like a mass fight between Kang and everyone. I 100% believe that all this mush does lead to something, but I do need the thing that the films make sense. And I am one of those people who thought Multiverse of Madness was better than other people think. It was a good film because it had development. It did have at least some point of development, not between characters, but just in general with Stephen Strange. We learned about his dead sister, developing between other characters. We learned about his fears. We learned more about the character in general, and it showed his strength, showed new things about him, and made him wiser, making him more set up for a bigger event. Versus Thor, after that movie, he doesn't seem to be setting up for anything, which means if they just dropped him off and never used him again, no one would care because there's no point in keeping him anymore. Because that film was like an end film. Basically, it ended on a way where you're not gonna see Thor again. Here's that blob. Drop the mic. I'm out. And I feel like that's not where they want to go. So, especially with the Thor will return, like I could see a good story going on between Thor and Gorr's daughter, but it just like I can just see the mess it could cause because of the comedy, especially if they bring back Taika Waititi. No offense, of course, but I do not want to see overkill comedy too much in any possible Thor 5 where Gorr's daughter is in it, because Thor 5 needs to be a serious film again. Comedy, yes, but they need to set up something soon because Thor needs to start going somewhere, because even the first two Thors, no matter how bad they were keep setting up more and more and more. Thor 4 does not set up anything beyond its own branches. Yes, it set up a fifth movie with a grain of salt and granite and all that stuff. Definitely set up another movie with Hercules, and I love that. It's a great post-credit scene, but I feel like they gotta get something more. Hercules is cool, but we definitely know he's not the main villain because that'd be the weakest villain I would ever see in a movie. So they need to kind of just tie things a little tighter, especially with all the criticism. And again, disclaimer, all that stuff. This is my personal opinion. This is me just going on a rant about Thor 4. I think it was a good movie just to watch in general. I definitely wouldn't not watch it ever again. but it's not like I'm gonna remember this for the rest of my life and it's gonna be a poster on my wall kind of thing. And it's not also one of those meaty movies that be like, I'm excited to rewatch this again because it's just entertaining to eat and watch and all that stuff. It's kind of in the gutter. It's just kind of, I feel like I wanted more. They didn't give enough, and that is their problem. They didn't give enough, and that's been happening in the last two films. So to conclude this up, Thor 4 wasn't a mess, wasn't disgusting, wasn't horrible, but lacked. It played it safe and didn't give what all these great actors and all these great team members should have gave. It just cut it out, destroyed it, and kind of said, this is just a filler film. And I just hope that they can figure that out and get it settled. And I have high hopes and high expectations. And I definitely love Marvel for what they've done, even with that film. And I'm just saying the points. I'm just saying all the negatives, but there are a lot of positives. So, in that sense, Marvel, we love you. You're the best. And hopefully you can make more great movies. And for you, have the greatest day. I'll see you in the next one.